with an isolated shower also possible toward the north and west. It's a similar weather story in northeast England with strong winds, particularly over high ground. Though there will be some blustery showers, there will be plenty of late sunny spells in between. Remaining rather damp across southern Scotland with showers that could be heavy at times. However, there will be some sunny spells in between. Remaining windy though, this will ease later. For Northern Ireland, there'll be a mixture of sunny spells and frequent blustery showers, some of which could be heavy at times. The showers and wind easing overnight. The showers will continue across northern and western parts of the UK overnight, though winds will slowly start to ease. And that is how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. And now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Now, this show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's media personality and writer Christine Hamilton, and also political commentator of Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. The top stories for you this hour. Clarence House says Prince Charles remains politically neutral after he reportedly described the government's migrant policy as appalling. That comes after the High Court ruled the first deportation flight to Rwanda can go ahead on Tuesday. Campaign groups are expected to appeal. The Times newspaper is reporting that a source heard the Prince of Wales say he was more than disappointed by the policy during a private conversation. The Conservative MP John Whittingdale told GB News the plan is sensible and meets its objectives.
The people who will be sent to Rwanda are young males who are economically active, where there is a shortage in Rwanda. There is not in this country, we have problems being created by the level of migration. In Rwanda, they want to have migrants, and the people trying to get to this country do so because they want to be economically active and to be able to earn money, which they will be able to do. So on the basic policy, I have no great difficulty. I think it meets a number of objectives. The court ruling yesterday, I would hope also, is a recognition that Parliament decided that it favoured this policy, and it is for Parliament to decide and not for the courts.
Meanwhile, the royal commentator Jenny Bond says Prince Charles should never be compared with the Queen.
For one, woke up this morning and saw those headlines and thought, good for you, Charles. That's just great. You've come out and you've said what you think, albeit privately, but Clarence House is not denying it. I think they would deny it if these conversations had not been had. And maybe Charles wanted his views to be known. He's a compassionate man. I know he is. He's a deep-thinking, philosophical man of great sentiment, and I think he feels strongly about this.
Well, in other news today, the family of Sean Pinner, who was given a death sentence for fighting Russian forces in Ukraine, say they are devastated. He and another British man, Aidan Aslin, were found guilty of mercenary activities by a court in the separatist region of Donetsk, now under the control of the Russian authorities. In a statement, Mr. Pinner's family described it as an illegal show trial and said he should be treated like a prisoner of war with full independent legal representation. Chris Daw QC says the man should be treated fairly.
The truth of it is there isn't a constitution for this republic because it's not a real country. So these men really should be treated as prisoners of war. They should be treated humanely. And if they are executed, it will be an utter outrage. And I really hope that everybody in the international community will do everything they can to stop that happening.
Critics of the government's food strategy for England have described a leaked draft as a half-baked blueprint that's flatter than a pancake. They're concerned key recommendations from a major review are being ignored, including the introduction of a salt and sugar tax to help transform the nation's diet. Campaigners also accused ministers of goading farmers into producing more meat. The white paper is expected to be published on Monday. 3 people have been charged with the murder of a father whose body was found in woodland in Buckinghamshire. Mohammed Shah Subani was reported missing in May 2019 when he failed to return to his West London home. The 27-year-old's remains were discovered several months later. And Brazilian police, searching for a British journalist that's been missing, have found what appears to be human remains in the Amazon River. Dom Phillips and Indigenous expert Bruno Pereira were last seen on Sunday after visiting a remote part of the rainforest in São Rafael. Police are reportedly focusing their investigation now on illegal fishermen and poachers. The mother of a boy with severe epilepsy is urging manufacturers to help struggling families access medical cannabis. Charlotte Caldwell says dozens of people have to pay privately to get a prescription at a time when the cost of living is soaring. She says those aged 18 or under can access treatment, but older children are being forgotten.
These mothers and fathers that are nursing them are absolutely exhausted, and they are having to budget really tightly simply because the cost of living crisis that we're in now has really took a grip on them. So I would like to appeal to Sajid, the Health Secretary, to extend RESCAS for these forgotten children over 18.
Interest rates for student loans are going to be capped for a year to protect against soaring inflation. Borrowers were facing a 12% rate at the end of the summer, but from September that's being cut to 7.3%. The Department for Education says it's the largest scale reduction of student loan interest rates on record. You're up to date on GB News. More news as it happens now. It's time for Nana Akua.
Good afternoon. So it's fast approaching 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm fed up with when I call businesses like utility companies and in particular government bodies like Child Maintenance Services, the Passport Office or the DVLA, you literally have to set aside an afternoon for it. I mean, the last time I called one of those, I was passed from pillar to post. The whole thing took an hour and 37 minutes. And I know because I watched the minutes dwindle away, put it on speaker until someone finally answered, and then made sure I didn't do anything stupid like accidentally hang up or press the wrong button. And the reason they give for it taking so long to respond or answer the phone? Because of COVID. They are now working from home, or the polite term, remote working. I mean, come on, be honest. The reason why they haven't responded or answered the phone is because, in reality, they're cleaning the house or tending to the cat, doing the washing, or probably sitting in the occasional sunshine. One person I know was playing golf while supposedly working from home. I mean, it's an absolute outrage. And far from being good for the economy, in particular customers, an ONS study suggested that working from home is apparently more unequal and poorer areas of the country are losing out. Working from home appeared to be the preserve of those who are higher up the economic scale and middle-aged, and that they basically are moving in their droves away from expensive city dwellings to the countryside, which in most cases is cheaper, and far from boosting the local economies and helping with the levelling up agenda, they're actually forcing house prices up and pricing the local people out of the market. Although another study by Zoom and Indeed showed red wall areas, places like Stoke and Britain's third largest and biggest growth area for remote and flexible jobs, the opposite to the theory that it's a middle-class Remainer cult for people who've spent lockdown buying puppies and pelotons. But then I suppose Zoom and Indeed would say that, wouldn't they? Apparently, almost a quarter of the workforce in this country are remote working. Look, I don't know about you, but I'm with Jacob Rees-Mogg on this one. He had the right idea when he sent out the notes to the civil servants asking them to come back in the office. He said, "Sorry you were out when I visited. I look forward to seeing you in the office very soon." And I'm afraid, whilst I agree flexible working has its place, let's be honest, the productivity that is lost when no one is watching over you to make sure that the job is done is surely unquestionable. I'm sick and tired of the excuses that companies, and in particular the civil service, make for the lengthy wait times. It's time for people to get back to the office. Working from home, or the posh term, remote working, it's so remote in many cases there's nothing actually happening. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. In our Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should royals weigh in on immigration policy? Now, this comes after it was reported yesterday that Prince Charles privately, apparently, described the government's plans to send migrants to Rwanda as appalling. Speaking of the royals, though, today it is also the Queen's official birthday. She's 96 years old, which brings her Jubilee celebrations to a close. Meanwhile, Charles and Camilla fancy a bit of cha-cha-cha as they're reportedly in talks to host Strictly Come Dancing at Buckingham Palace. I'd love to go on that. I'd obviously win. And in difficult conversations at 5 o'clock, I'll be looking at the hidden cancer cost of lockdown. Army veteran and father of 5, Lee Webb, refused to leave the GP's car park until someone saw him. For months, he couldn't get a face-to-face appointment, but thank God he did, because he was diagnosed with head and neck cancer. We'll hear his story just after 5. That's all coming up on today's show. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel media personality and writer Christine Hamilton, and also political commentator and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Aman-Kona. Right, so we've talked a lot about working from home, haven't we? But it seems that those who are working from home, obviously a lot of them white-collar workers, so they're not necessarily manual labourers or people who have to be in the office like midwives and things like that. But it seems that although a lot of people have said good things about it, that in fact it's actually pushing the prices of the local places that these commuters are moving to, pushing prices up. Local people can't afford it, and that there is now a vision that perhaps it's not such a good thing. What do you think, Christine?
Well, personally, I love working from home, of course. But it requires a degree of self-discipline. And my whole working life, I spent a lot of time working from home. In fact, decades ago, before it was fashionable. And a lot of people just don't have that discipline. And I couldn't have agreed with you more. I mean, the hours that we have all spent hanging onto the phone waiting for somebody. And what I think a lot of people don't realise is that if they make it obvious to their employers that they can work from home, that the employers don't have to see them, they don't have to come into the office. Next thing that will happen is that job will be exported to goodness knows where, to India or heaven knows where. So they are in danger of folding up the job that they've got. Is it pushing up house prices? I hadn't actually thought about that, but yes, it probably is. But I wouldn't have thought that was a massive impact.
Well, it would
I'd
be.
like to see the figures, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a study by the ONS, and the thing is, if you say, you know, you've moved out to a lovely sort of place in the village, somewhere nice, and there's all, you know, the locals are there and all that, but then a lot of people from the cities are doing that, and a lot of them have got quite a bit of money. You sell your property in the city, you can get threefold of what you would there. Suddenly you're in it, and then more people start doing it. It pushes the prices up, and the indigenous population is struggling to actually afford their own homes. What do you think, Abby?
But I mean, ultimately, the issue with house prices and the housing crisis is to do with the fact that we're not building enough homes. That's a separate conversation. It's been covered many times this week. But on the issue of working from home, I'm actually a big supporter of working from home if the employees can prove that they are being as productive at home as they would be in the office. Now, in the case of these call centre workers, obviously that's not been the case for you. Waiting an hour and 37 minutes to get a service is absolutely appalling. But it has also brought a lot of benefits to people. People's work-life balance are better, they're spending more time with their family. And actually, for some people, they're actually more productive at home. A lot of the fastest-growing companies in the world, tech companies, for example, have had flexible working for decades. Facebook, Google, Twitter. You know, working from home is very common.
Yeah, but I'm not completely opposed to it. But what I'm saying is that if you look at the way it's sort of panned out in this country, I mean, have you tried the passport office? Have you tried the DVLA? I mean, it's just a joke. And if you're trying to get child maintenance services or any of the government bodies in particular, there seems to be a very sort of lethargic approach to it.
Sorry.
Yes, I think this is also an issue of, you know, sort of the differences between public sector and private sector. In the private sector, businesses in general are just more efficient than when things are done through the government, so that could be an issue. But I do not think that all of a sudden the passport office delays will be solved if everyone suddenly goes back into the office. That is a problem of staffing. They've let go of a lot of people. There's a lot of reform that needs to happen in the public sector to make it as productive as the private sector, and working from home isn't a silver bullet.
But I know people who would actually admit that it's actually less productive. I mean, I spoke to one of my friends and I said, what do you think? Is it, I asked her, I said, well, look, for you, is it more productive working from home? And there was a pause. And she went, nah, because she knows that she's there, she's not as disciplined. She says, sometimes I work a bit later, but or more sort of inappropriate hours than if I were in the office, but she doesn't believe she's more productive.
No, well, that's an example of what I said earlier, that you have to be self-disciplined to work at home as efficiently as you would do. And yes, if you don't start work till 10 o'clock, then you work on in the evening. But some jobs lend themselves to working from home, as you say, these young start-up companies and all these young kids, etc. They have a different work ethic, I think, to a lot of people in the civil service. You know, they've got a job for life, a lot of them, a nice fat pension coming along, and there's no need for them to work hard. They're not judged on their productivity. They can, too many of them can just... I'm not dissing the entire civil service, by the way, before everybody comes down on me on for that, but too many of them just plod along, and there's nobody actually marking their homework properly.
I've dissed the civil service for that. I've had enough of it.
Not all of them. You can't diss them all.
Well, a lot of them, and I you know, because I'm trying to get my daughter's passport renewed so that she can go on the buses for free because she's of the age where it's free. Do you know, it's been about 4 months now. So in the end, I'm actually going to have to write to them and say, look, I actually want my money back from these transport companies that I'm having to pay for her to get on the bus because we can't get the passport to prove that she's of the age, so therefore I'm spending money.
Oh, so you need the passport.
You need the passport to prove that she's of the age, so that you have to send a copy of the passport. So because you can't get that, then I end up paying more, paying the bus fare there and back every day for the last how many months.
That's actually a good case for trying for a refund. Yeah, try it after.
I will give it a go and let you know how to get on. I mean, there's a passport office, they're taking ages, and that's an example of where a lot of people are working from home. I take your point that they are, you know, experiencing low staffing levels, but for those who are working, I don't believe they're working very hard at all. I know what I'm like.
I know what I'm like. It all comes down to your own personal work ethic, doesn't it?
I clean the toilet rather than actually do any work. That's the way I think. But what do you think? You get in touch with us. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And also we've got an app. Don't forget to download the app. You can find out all the different shows, or you can even watch us live now on YouTube or listen via DAB. Now, after the break, it's time for our Great British Debate. And this hour, I'm asking, should royals weigh in on immigration policy? I mean, it's that debate again, isn't it? They're going through the whole legal system. They're getting, I mean, thank goodness Priti Patel's potentially migrants may be sent back, but who knows? Send us what you think. Is Prince Charles helping with his comments? You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or send me that tweet. And currently I've got a poll up right now asking, should royals weigh in on immigration policy? Cast your vote now. We'll be back after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon. So it's coming up to 20 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, before the break, we were discussing working from home and the negative impact that it's actually having on communities. Let's see what you've been saying. Marion says these are the people destroying the UK. Unions, civil servants, but most of all, the lefty, woke Labour Party. Thank you for your excellent monologue. Always a pleasure. Thank you for that. I was obviously going to read that one. Steve says, it's not fair to allow a portion of society to work from home whilst many jobs like carers, nursing, warehouse workers could never enjoy that benefit. And Paul says work from home is another classic example of the modern idealist world. It is, isn't it? I mean, OK, I get it. There are flexible... I like flexible working, OK, but come on. Seriously, they need to get back. And the civil servants, the passport office, the DVLA... It's time to get back to work. Right, but now, of course, the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should Prince Charles comment on the government's immigration policy? Now, this comes after it was reported in today's newspapers that Prince privately described the government's policy to send migrants to Rwanda as appalling. Now, he's said to be frustrated at the policy because he's due to represent the Queen at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Rwanda. That's actually in Rwanda this month. I don't see what everyone's complaining about. What's wrong with Rwanda? His alleged comments came after a legal challenge against deporting asylum seekers to the Central African country, which were rejected by the High Court. The first flight to send migrants there could leave on Tuesday, and an appeal against that ruling has actually been launched. So joining me now is Grant Harold. He's a royal commentator and former butler to Prince Charles, William and Harry. Grant, did you enjoy your cruise? Did you enjoy your cruise?
I had a wonderful time, Nana.
I thought you were
it's
going
nice
somewhere...
to be back on land.
Yes, I thought you were going somewhere exotic, but what was it, Southampton and then... Not Norwich.
Southampton over to Norway and back again.
Norway.
So
I knew it
nothing
began
too
with an
exotic.
N. So talk to me then. Prince Charles, allegedly he made these comments, but it's across all the press, so I'm going with the allegedly and believing it's true. In your view, should he even be talking about this sort of thing?
It's a tricky one, Nana, because obviously the Constitution, part of the agreement back in the 17th century was that they don't get involved in politics, they remain neutral, and it's something that the Queen and members of the royal family are supposed to do. I think what's difficult is this one. Obviously, it's been reported, and as you said, it's in all the papers. But obviously, it was a private conversation. I think this is what's a little bit tricky because with the private conversations, like you, like me, everyone, they're allowed to have those conversations. Of course, they've got their own views and things. They're just not supposed to kind of air those, and that's when it becomes a bit tricky. But then again, I think it also depends on what the subject is, because I think this shows you how something like this, he feels really passionate. He cares about people, and probably finds that maybe it's unfair what's happening, and he's obviously voiced that, and that's which has now become the news story.
He's voiced it to one of his friends, and with friends like that, who needs enemies, to be honest? but in my view, so in the palace, if you want something to get out, you'd probably say something, and then. So I think there may have been. That's just my view, that there's a sort of deliberate slip, so it gets out there to potentially influence the situation. Do you think that could be the case?
No, I don't disagree with you. I think, it's difficult for them because if they want to view something like this, they technically can't. But as you quite rightly said, if they wanted to, like anybody within a royal household, if they want to view something, you only have to mention it to a few other people. They have to mention it to a few, and before you know it, it's out there. So, and they're quite, it is quite a strict place, There's things that are kept very confidential. If something does get out, then it can be pure accident. But at the same time, it's not impossible. So I suppose if there was something they wanted to get out and view something, especially something like this, because I think he is, bear in mind that I've been lucky enough to know the man and to work for him. I know how he cares about people and worries about things. And, which I know people say, well, it's not his business because he's supposed to be neutral. And I know that they understand that. But at the same time, sometimes I think maybe they feel the hands are tied on things that they do feel passionate and strong about. I think it was a couple of years ago, he came under fire because of his views about the environment, which of course can also come under political. So it can be sometimes it can be really difficult for them.
Yes, but you'd think, though, that seeing as he's going to Rwanda very soon, that his comments... And, I mean, Rwanda is part of the Commonwealth, right? So what's wrong with Rwanda? Well, why is he talking about it as though it's abhorrent? You're sending somebody to potentially a processing centre. I mean, other countries do things like that. Why would he say that against Rwanda? What's wrong with Rwanda?
Maybe I'm kind of wondering from my point of view, and I'm obviously not 100% sure. I was thinking about it. I thought maybe it's just the logistics. Maybe it's kind of thinking, well, can't it be done here? Why are we sending them? As you said, it's within the Commonwealth, but why are we not just keeping it here? And also, it's going to cost. I'm guessing. I don't know about this, Nana, but I'm guessing it's going to cost obviously to send them out there for this to then come back again. That might be something maybe that obviously is being considered as well when he's been thinking about it. And I think maybe it's just common sense. He's thinking possibly why we send them. It could be anywhere, to any other country. Why are we doing that when it could potentially be done from here?
Well, some of them won't be coming back there. That's the thing, isn't it? But no, exactly. I hear you. But when you talk expense, I mean, currently what we're paying £5 million a day to keep people in hotels or in conditions. I don't know what the conditions are like, but it doesn't. Or we're going to take on places like ex-military bases and put them in very small villages and overrun the population with people who are not from that area, which can be very intimidating for those who live in these rural surroundings. And it seems that Prince Charles, in his wonderful palace, is actually nowhere near the migrants, so it's quite easy for him to say that. But he's never going to deal with the sort of consequences of this policy not working, is he?
This is where it does get tricky, and you're quite right. I've always thought about this. I mean, it's been said that with some, obviously this is going back to Ukraine, with refugees from Ukraine, which I know is obviously very different, that how the members of the royal family said they want to kind of help. Obviously, this is slightly different. What is different? But I think from their point of view, it is tricky because, as you quite rightly pointed out, they do live in castles and palaces and beautiful homes and things, and it is a different world. But again, it's just from my point of view of knowing the man and actually working for him. I do understand that he does really care, about people, and he wants everyone to kind of be treated within reason. I know it's not possible; it isn't possible. He wants people to be kind of treated as fairly as possible across the world, and I think that's what he's trying to do. But you're absolutely right, because this is something that people do point out the obvious, where they say that, for people that sometimes fight for these people, their background, their lifestyle is very different to their lifestyle. So it can be a tricky one. But then again, if they went kind of fight in the corner, then who is fighting the corner sometimes? That's the other.
He could potentially open up one of those palaces that he's not using and perhaps house a load of migrants there. That would be quite helpful. Listen, Grant,
I wouldn't mind moving into one of them actually myself.
I wouldn't mind as well. Look, I'll tell you what, I'll swap my house. They can live in my house. I'll go and live there. Grant,
I'll join you.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Grant. That's Grant Harold. He's a former...
Thank you, Nana.
Thank you so much to Prince Charles, William and Harry. Right, I'm also joined now by Lord Alf Dubs, who's a Labour peer and also a former child refugee. OK, so it's good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us, Alf. What is your view on this and Prince Charles actually speaking out?
Well, first of all, Prince Charles has a social conscience. And if this is what he believes in, then good for him that he does believe in it. After all, we expect too much of the royal family. We expect them to be well informed, and then we expect them never to pass a comment. However, if it was a private conversation, and if that was a breach of trust, then I think it's regrettable that the royals can't speak informally. Years ago, I chatted to the Queen, and she said all sorts of interesting things. But I regarded that as a totally confidential information, although I found it absolutely fascinating about her knowledge and her insight, and she was well aware of what was going on, and she had good judgment. So, turning back to Prince Charles, I'm delighted he thinks what he does, because he's also worried about the reputation of this country, and the reputation of this country is going to be seriously damaged by what the government are now seeking to do. It's not a woke Labour thing. This is our wish to retain the good reputation of this country. We stand well in the world, or we used to do. I don't want to see our reputation tarnished. So good for Prince Charles that he thinks that. I'm worried that somebody breached confidence.
Well, you talk about tarnishing reputation, and I hear you, but first of all, I don't really think there's that much wrong with Rwanda. Yes, it may have had some issues in the past, but it's part of the Commonwealth. It's also improving. But also, what we don't want is a reputation of being such a soft touch that actually we're going to encourage people to go across in the way they have via the dinghies, because it's dangerous for starters. We don't want to be... We're trying to do something different, aren't we? We're trying to stop people from taking a dangerous crossing and putting money into the pockets of the smugglers. That's ultimately the goal, isn't it?
It is absolutely right. We should stop the smugglers. The smugglers are evil, nasty people who, for the sake of money, are willing to risk the lives of vulnerable people in the Channel or earlier in the Mediterranean. So, of course, they're nasty people. The question is whether this is the right way to deal with it. And whether, as a country, we should be exporting our responsibilities to somewhere in Africa. I don't honestly think that's right. It's not in keeping with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. It is saying we're going to send people away. There hasn't been a proper debate in Parliament on this at all. There have been odd snatches of debate, and we don't even know the details. For example, if somebody is sent to Rwanda and they're given refugee status, then they have to stay there. Suppose they're denied refugee status. What happens then? Are they brought back here, or are they still kept in Rwanda? It is not even clear, and we haven't had a chance to ask proper questions of the government. So there are points of detail that do matter. But in terms of dealing with the smugglers, there are better ways of dealing with them. We've got to deal with them. They are nasty, nasty people. And I agree with everybody that we've got to catch the smugglers and stop them doing it. But there are better ways of doing it than that.
Well, better ways like what? Give me one good way.
Right. We should talk to the French. Instead of shouting at the French, we should seek to cooperate with the French. They're our nearest, or one of our nearest neighbours.
But we have. I mean, Priti Patel has tried. She has. She's tried to give them some money to try and look after the borders and everything. She has. We all, it takes two to tango. We're trying that, but still, the people are coming across in the boats in their hundreds daily.
Well, first of all, I'm not convinced that we have talked to the French properly. We also spend our time shouting abuse at the French. All right, the French also have got things to answer for. I don't exonerate them either. But having said that, I do think a proper approach to the French, where we say to the French, look, where there are people who've got to Calais, who've got family members here, and who've got entitlement to refugee status, then we'll bring them here. We'll say to the French, we'll do that. But remember, most of the refugees who get to France claim asylum in France. We only get a handful of them coming to this country. And remember, they used to also come on the back of lorries. The majority of people who've come this way are given refugee status. So we have to acknowledge that their human rights are also under threat. And I think we should treat them properly, and we should treat them in keeping with international agreements. It isn't much to ask. We're talking about a very small number of people.
Well, so finally then, Lord Dubs, do you think then that it is right for Prince Charles to get involved in this way? I mean, in particular because he is going to Rwanda, and his comments of saying it's appalling isn't really very complimentary to Rwanda itself, is it?
Well, I think I would interpret his comment much more about being an interpretation of British policy than about the conditions in Rwanda. We could argue about human rights in Rwanda. They're not perfect by any means. But I think Prince Charles was more worried about the policies of the British government. Look, when he becomes king, he will be consulted every week by the Prime Minister. Maybe he is already. And he's entitled to have his say. I welcome the fact that Prince Charles has shown good instincts on this, and it is to the credit of the royal family that he's done that. So good for him, I say.
I think that's what we're afraid of. Lord Alf Dubs, thank you so much for talking to me. That's Lord Alf Dubs. He's a Labour peer and former child refugee. Lovely to talk to you. Well, crikey, it's 33 minutes after 4 o'clock here with me. I'm Nana. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel, and still to come, we'll continue the great British debate this hour. I'm asking, should the royals weigh in on immigration policy? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, media personality and political commentator Christine Hamilton, and co-founder Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona. Plus, after 5 o'clock, it's time for difficult conversations where I'll be speaking to an army veteran and personal trainer, Lee Webb. Now, he's been battling head and neck cancer, which might have been caught earlier if he'd been able to see a GP. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Podley Middlehurst.
Nana, thank you. Good afternoon. The top story. Clarence House says Prince Charles remains politically neutral after he reportedly described the government's migrant policy as appalling. It comes after the High Court ruled the first deportation flight to Rwanda can go ahead on Tuesday. Campaign groups are expected to appeal. The Times newspaper is reporting that a source heard the Prince of Wales say he was more than disappointed by the policy during a private conversation. The Conservative MP John Whittingdale told GB News the plan is sensible and meets all its objectives. The family of Sean Pinner, who was given a death sentence for fighting Russian forces in Ukraine, say they are devastated. He and another man, who's also British, Aidan Aslin, were found guilty of mercenary activities by a court in the separatist region of Donetsk being run by Russia. In a statement, Mr Pinner's family described it as an illegal show trial and said he should be treated like any other prisoner of war with full independent legal representation. Critics of the government's food strategy in England have described a leaked draft as half-baked and flatter than a pancake. They're concerned key recommendations from a major review are being ignored, including the introduction of a sugar and salt tax to help transform the nation's diet. Campaigners also accused ministers of goading farmers into producing more meat. The white paper is expected to be published on Monday. And the mother of a boy with severe epilepsy is urging manufacturers to help struggling families access medical cannabis. Charlotte Caldwell says dozens of people have to pay privately to get a prescription at a time when the cost of living is soaring. She says those aged 18 or under can access treatment, but older children are being forgotten. You're up to date on TV, online and via radio on DAB+. Nana Akua is here after the break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now we return to our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should royals weigh in on immigration policy? Now, it's been reported in today's newspaper that Prince Charles privately described the government's policies to send migrants to Rwanda as appalling. His alleged comments came after a legal challenge against deporting asylum seekers to the Central African country were rejected by the High Court. The first flight to send migrants to Rwanda could leave on Tuesday. An appeal against the ruling has been launched. So today I'm asking, should royals weigh in on immigration policy? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by media personality and political commentator Christine Hamilton and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albie Amankona. Let's start with you, Albie. What do you think then? Come on. Should Prince Charles is speaking, saying, he said it to a friend, so we'll caveat that it might not be true, but they do have a habit of leaking things that are true and every paper is covering it. So
yes, they do have a habit of leaking things. And one of the things that I found really interesting when I was reading this exclusive in The Times this morning is that I got a bit of a sense of déjà vu, because in 1986, The Times published a headline which said, "Queen dismayed by uncaring Thatcher." And that was a leak from the palace, from a private conversation. And it actually led to the sacking of the then press secretary, I think, Michael Shane. It's actually serialised in The Crown really beautifully. So it seemed to me like a very...
It must be true.
But nonetheless, this did happen. You may remember it, Christine.
I do.
But it seemed to me like maybe something similar had happened, and perhaps there was a private conversation between the Prince of Wales and one of his aides, or perhaps another member of the royal family, and perhaps it was leaked on purpose.
OK, so it being leaked on purpose... in your view, is this the sort of thing that he should be getting involved in particular? He's going to Rwanda, so, you know, it's a bit unsavoury of him to sort of diss it when...
I think it's wrong for members of the royal family to be commenting on, you know, issues of the government. That is the whole point of having this constitutional monarchy that we have. And so when things like this happen, it makes the government look bad, it makes the royal family look bad. Essentially, it makes the British state look like it's dysfunctional. And I don't think it's right to be having the royal family commenting on issues of the government, and especially hot-button issues like immigration.
Christine?
100% agree with that. I mean, the royal family should not meddle publicly in political matters. Now, the question of whether he did it deliberately or not, who knows? If he did do it deliberately, then frankly that's even worse, because he is deliberately putting himself out there, getting involved in what is a really controversial hot potato. And he said when he did an interview for his 60th birthday with one of the Dimblebys, I think it was, and he said, I am not that stupid. In other words, to get involved with political... Here he is wading in. If it was accidental, and somebody has, you know, shame on whoever leaked it, but I think it it would be great to know that. But, you know, he can't have his cake and eat it. And nor can any of them. I mean, Harry wanted his cake and eat it. He was told, no, you can't. If you don't want to be part of the royal family, off you go. So he's gone. I mean, Prince William got involved on the slavery issue. Now, he's not yet the king. He's the Prince of Wales in waiting. But he shouldn't have got involved in that. These are really hot political issues. And the Queen, for 70 years, has been spectacularly successful at keeping her mouth shut on these issues and not putting her foot in it. But she, of course, had the Prince Philip to do it for her, you know, all his wonderful gaffes. He had a word for it. He called it pedodontology. I think that's right. Foot in mouth, pedodontology. But no, I think it's a very, very slippery slope, and it must be very difficult for him because he does feel passionately, and I understand him wanting to say things, and of course he's going to say things privately. It must be very, very difficult. But if we are to continue, if this monarchy is to continue as successfully under him as it has been under his mother, he has got to learn not to say these things.
Well, it's all right for him, though, in his opulent palaces. I mean, you know, it's no point. I mean, you're in your palace. They're never going to be next door to your house. And he's making comments like that as if there's something wrong with Rwanda, which is part of the Commonwealth in any case.
Well,
so I kind of think it's a bit...
Well, I think what I think a lot of people didn't realise, and I didn't realise this until recently, is that people think of Rwanda and they think of it as a poor country.
Exactly, it's not.
The photographs that they see give the wrong impression. These people who are sent there, they're going to be put up, if they're lucky, some of them, in a 3-star hotel with a swimming pool, a golf course, etc., etc., etc. They're not going to be in a mud hut somewhere. You know, they're going to have much better facilities than a lot have got them here, and certainly a lot better than many people in this country enjoy. So I think one has to get it in perspective. But, of course, there are two issues. One is, should they be sent to Rwanda? And the second is, should Prince Charles involve himself? And on the second, no.
I think, to be honest, I think it's slightly racist, if I'm honest, that people are complaining that Rwanda is such a terrible place. You know, because to me, I'm like, well, what's wrong with it? You know, I know they might have they might not be as tolerant as this country on certain issues, but it is quite an up-and-coming place. And the reason why it was used as a deterrent was simply to make people think, well, if you're coming to one place, you're not going to end up in the place that you've come to. I mean, if they'd said Bermuda, I think people would be coming here even more, wouldn't they? I mean, Bermuda's great.
I think I would question whether or not it's working, though, because there were a couple of days where there were no migrant crossings after the announcement was made, and you had some commentators saying, oh, it's working. But, of course, the migrants are still crossing the channel. And it is, I initially said I thought it was quite an extreme deterrent, but I think we just have to see if it works. And I think the evidence at the moment is pointing towards the fact that it's not working.
Well, hang on, nobody's gone there yet.
Nobody's gone there.
I think it's far too early to say whether it is. It worked for Australia. Their similar policy worked brilliantly. They sent them to Papua New Guinea, I think.
Which is quite a nice place, to be honest.
But that really worked for Australia. But I think it's too early to say whether it's working.
And how can you say
it hasn't happened yet?
How can you say listen, the reason, if it doesn't work, it will be because of this ridiculous level of legal challenges that people can make. People aren't convinced that even if it's a working policy, that it will be able to be effective. You know,
98% of people who come, illegal immigrants come, or economic migrants, whatever you want to call them, come without any passports or travel documents. Now, I don't believe that 98% simply don't have them. They have destroyed them. So it makes it that much more difficult to prove who they are. And it's Tony Blair brought in making that an offence. But, I mean, about 2 people, I think, have been prosecuted for it.
Albie.
Look, I'm open to seeing how this policy pans out, but since it's been announced, it's not actually really stopped migrants from crossing the channel. And the point is that it's a deterrent to stop people from wanting to cross in the first place. So even just the announcement of it and the threat of being sent back at some point in the future should really be enough to prove whether or not the policy works.
No.
And unfortunately, it's not stopped the flow of migrants across the channel.
Well, we keep shooting ourselves in the foot, don't we? We come up with something that's probably quite a good idea, and then we have a load of illegal eagles who probably would not have migrants next door to their home, but they're defending the whole issue and different appeals.
But that's been overturned, hasn't it? So that legal challenge has been stopped. So let's
no, they can do it, but they're limited to the number of times. I think it is. So you can only have 3 challenges or something like that. There's a limit now in the Nationality and Borders Bill. Let's just quickly find out what GB Voice says, because the show's nothing without you. Let's welcome our great British voice to the show. Their opportunity to tell us what they think, and yours too, on the topics we're discussing. Should we go to... Let's go to Gillingham. Let's go to Kent. Let's have a chat with Neil. Neil. All right, Neil, what do you think then? Prince Charles, he's interfering, he's coming up with, you know, what should he be doing that?
I think it's sad that in private he's had a conversation and that someone's then passed that information on. I mean, I deal with people who struggle with the cost of living, so whether someone sold that story on to try and make themselves a few quid, it's a bit harsh. The guy's going to have an opinion. It's not as if he's gone on national TV and said it. He's had a private conversation with a friend or an aide, or we think, and that's been made public, which I think is very sad. I think everyone's going to have an opinion, whoever they are, whether it's royalty. We've all got an opinion on what's going to happen with Rwanda. I've been to Calais myself, to the camps out there, and the conditions are appalling. So I think it is harsh what they deal with out there, and these people are not getting in boats for no reason. It's very sad, and as your colleagues were saying there about this information getting to them, how are they getting this information when they're in these camps in Calais? They've hardly all got smartphones and the internet.
Well, they're
living in dreadful conditions.
No. OK, so the camps are obviously... then France should be looking at the conditions of the camps, because that's not on. But they do have phones, and a lot of them chuck them over the side of the dinghy when they come through so that you can't identify them. I mean, we've seen that happen. But that's not to say that, you know, that migrants are not welcome in this country. It's just that the mode with which they're coming across is really... We need to stop it, because it's dangerous, frankly, and money is going to the pockets of smugglers. But if we come back to Prince Charles, just very briefly before I go back to my panel... So sometimes the royal family do have a habit of leaking things deliberately. If that is the premise and he's done that, what is your view then?
I think they're still going to have conversations. What do these guys talk about? They're not allowed to talk about politics. They're not allowed to talk about... What can they talk about?
My question is...
There's only so much they can do.
But Neil, what I'm saying is, if it is leaked deliberately, if this has been leaked deliberately, so that the government, so that it interferes with the policy, do you think that the royals should be getting involved in that way?
No, I think publicly they shouldn't be. But if this is this deliberate, or is this just someone who sold a story? If someone's got access to that kind of information and they can make themselves a few pound, has it been done for that, or is this a deliberate? I mean, I don't think Prince Charles is probably that stupid to delete, to do something like this.
But they might do. They might do. Listen, Neil, it's always good to talk to you. Lovely to hear your view. Final word to you, Albie. What do you think? Final word.
Final word is, I think it's wrong for Prince Charles to be commenting on issues of the government. It makes the state look dysfunctional, but the Rwanda policy is quite hard line, so I can understand why he has a private opinion on it, and perhaps a negative one.
Right, OK. Well, today I'm asking, should the royals weigh in on immigration policy? Lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts. Vincent says, then put your money where your mouth is and build and fund some camps or housing at Sandringham, Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle or Balmoral. Exactly, here. Elizabeth says royals should stay neutral on everything. That's why everyone loves our Queen. They should keep opinions to themselves. Also agree about working from home. It's a nightmare trying to get through to most companies now. It was bad enough before, but much worse now. Angela has said Charlie boy is once again helping the Republican movement. Maybe he doesn't want to be king. He's going the right way about abolishing the monarchy. Potentially. I mean, he's annoying a load of people. Richard says the royals are free to express their opinion, as everyone is, but given their position, political or controversial opinions should be and remain confidential. And finally, Simon says part of the deal of having a royal family is that they stay out of politics or it just won't work. Well, there is a poll up right now as well on Twitter throughout the show asking, should royals weigh in on immigration policy? And currently, what percentage do you think say yes? Take a guess, Christine, what do you think?
What, say yes, they should? Yeah. Oh, 10%.
What do you think, Albie? Without looking, don't cheat.
I've already seen it now,
right,
unfortunately.
Oh. 8%. 8%. Only 8% of you say yes. 92% of you say no, they shouldn't. Fabulous stuff. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we'll be having another Royal Roundup where we'll be discovering why Prince Charles and Camilla are hoping for some cha-cha-cha at Buckingham Palace. That's coming up now.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking to remain breezy with showers, mainly affecting northern and western parts of the UK. Let's take a look at the details. A breezy but mainly fine and dry evening to come across southwest England with plenty of late sunny spells. However, there remains a chance of catching the odd shower. Across southeast England, it will be generally dry with plenty of sunny spells, though there is also a chance of the odd isolated shower. Across South Wales, it's remaining rather windy across the high ground and generally breezy elsewhere with a mixture of sunny spells and some isolated showers. It's mostly a dry picture across the Midlands with plenty of evening sunshine on offer. It'll remain rather windy and gusty with an isolated shower also possible toward the north and west. It's a similar weather story in northeast England with strong winds, particularly over high ground. Though there will be some blustery showers, there will be plenty of late sunny spells in between. Remaining rather damp across southern Scotland with showers that could be heavy at times. However, there will be some sunny spells in between. Remaining windy though, this will ease later. For Northern Ireland, there'll be a mixture of sunny spells and frequent blustery showers, some of which could be heavy at times. The showers and wind easing overnight. The showers will continue across northern and western parts of the UK overnight, though winds will slowly start to ease. And that is how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping it.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
54 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. We are the People's Channel. Now, there is always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. I mean, every Saturday we like to give you a bit of a rundown, and who better to delve into that than Charles Ray. He's the former royal correspondent to The Sun. Charles, now this is a very, very exciting time, of course, because it is, in fact, the Queen's birthday, isn't it?
It's her official birthday. Okay. This is her actual birthday is on April the 21st, when she was 96. But she has an official birthday, which is tradition because way back in 1748, George II was born in November, and he decided to move his birthday to an official birthday in the summer because he thought it would be better weather. So that is why we have got a second birthday.
I never knew that.
Yeah, that's why we've got a second birthday. Now, we've had the celebrations for the Queen's birthday last weekend, 4 days of fantastic time. Today, it'll be a quiet reflection at Windsor Castle. Maybe a couple of the relatives will pop round, but there won't be any great events going on today.
No, it's a shame, isn't it? Because we used to have the red arrows, didn't they? Do a fly pass on it.
Well,
but they did that instead on.
Yes, because normally the official birthday is always the second Saturday in June, and normally the Trooping the Colour would be then, and so would the other events have happened then. But we had them early June. We had the bank holidays, so it just happens that today is the second Saturday of the month, and it is her official birthday.
Oh, she should have had another one, another trip, another fly past. Why not? Now, scary news. Andrew, is he potentially returning to public life?
Well, I am disgusted with the fact that Prince Andrew is likely to take part in the Garter ceremony. Now, the Garter ceremony is Britain's oldest order of chivalry. We haven't had it for 2 years because of COVID, and it's going to be the first time today. Now, there are 24 knights, and Andrew is one of them. Now, tomorrow, Baroness Amos, Camilla herself and Tony Blair will be installed as knights, because they have to wait for one of the knights to die before another knight is appointed. But Andrew is one of the knights, and he's expected to be there. Now, it is ironic, isn't it, that a man who has been accused of all sorts of things, which he denies. He was not found guilty because there hasn't been a trial. But there's clearly something going on there, and this is an order of chivalry. And I would have thought the best thing for him to do is to stay out of the public eye. I think he is trying to get back into some sort of public role, and I don't think it should be allowed, to be perfectly honest. And I think that Prince Charles and Prince William have successfully managed to put him on the back burner so far. And I think he himself should withdraw totally from public life, given what has happened over this last year.
Yeah, I think he should have his... I mean, his titles have gone, right?
Well,
but he's still the Duke of York, isn't he?
He's still the Duke of York, and, OK, let him remain the Duke of York.
I wouldn't want him associated with
He does not represent the royal family at any official function whatsoever. He muscled in on the ceremony at the church the other week by escorting his mother down. That's probably something that she wanted. But I don't think the country itself want to see Prince Andrew back again in any public role.
And he was also a French socialite who sued him over the chalet, the sale of that. She branded him as a fool as well, because apparently there was a debt that he took a long time to pay.
Well, yeah, but this is another debt. Yeah. This is another 1.6 million to another couple that we don't really know too much about, but it is hanging over the sale of this chalet in Verbier, which is he was supposed to have sold to help clear the debt he's got to pay towards Virginia Giuffre, the woman who made all these allegations.
Yes, and it's an interesting setup because he still lives with Sarah Ferguson as well. And
oh, absolutely.
It's good they're friends. I mean, that is nice, I suppose. But
I hope they're more than friends.
Do you think? Do you think they're more than friends?
I think they're more than friends.
Really? They just don't do friends?
Yeah, I think they're more than friends.
Now, what gives you that impression? What do you know?
Just things that people have said to me.
Really? What have they said?
Just that they're more than friends.
Well, OK, then let's talk Strictly. Strictly, apparently an episode of Strictly may well be filmed at Buckingham Palace.
This is a fantastic coup for BBC. It's absolutely fantastic. It's their top-rated reality show, and to get them to have an episode at Buckingham Palace with Prince Charles and Camilla, and they're hoping that maybe at least Camilla may have a jig around the dance floor, and if they get lucky, they'll get Prince Charles on the dance floor as well. But it's a great, great coup for the BBC.
Well, let's hope she's better than that Charlotte Hawkins. You remember seeing her dancing? She was the one off Good Morning Britain. She was like a scarecrow dancer, so wooden. It was unbelievable. Let's hope Camilla's got some style and some also...
Maybe they could put you in there as well.
Well, I'd like to be on there, but like I said, I would win. Because I'm very competitive. Well, listen, Charles, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining me. That is Charles Ray. He's a former royal correspondent to The Sun. This is GB News. More to come in the next hour. It's fast approaching 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Nana, thank you. The top story this hour. Clarence House says Prince Charles remains politically neutral after he reportedly described the government's migrant policy as appalling. That comes after the High Court ruled the first deportation flight to Rwanda can go ahead on Tuesday. Campaign groups are expected to appeal. The Times newspaper is reporting that a source heard the Prince of Wales say he was more than disappointed by the policy during a private conversation. Well, the Conservative MP John Whittingdale told GB News the plan is sensible and meets all its objectives.
The people who will be sent to Rwanda are young males who are economically active, where there is a shortage in Rwanda. There is not in this country. We have problems been created by the level of migration. In Rwanda, they want to have migrants, and the people trying to get to this country do so because they want to be economically active and to be able to earn money, which they will be able to do. So on the basic policy, I have no great difficulty. I think it meets a number of objectives. The court ruling yesterday, I would hope also, is a recognition that Parliament decided that it favoured this policy, and it is for Parliament to decide and not for the courts.
Meanwhile, the royal commentator Jenny Bond says Prince Charles shouldn't be compared with the Queen.
For one, woke up this morning and saw those headlines and thought, good for you, Charles. That's just great. You've come out and you've said what you think, albeit privately, but Clarence House is not denying it. I think they would deny it if these conversations had not been had. And maybe Charles wanted his views to be known. He's a compassionate man. I know he is. He's a deep-thinking, philosophical man of great sentiment, and I think he feels strongly about this.
In other news today, the family of Sean Pinner, who was given a death sentence for fighting Russian forces in Ukraine, says they are devastated. He and another British man, Aidan Aslin, were found guilty of mercenary activities by a court in the separatist region of Donetsk. In a statement, Mr Pinner's family described it as an illegal show trial and said he should be allowed full independent legal representation. Chris Daw QC says the men should be treated fairly.
The truth of it is there isn't a constitution for this republic because it's not a real country. So these men really should be treated as prisoners of war. They should be treated humanely. And if they are executed, it will be an utter outrage. And I really hope that everybody in the international community will do everything they can to stop that happening.
Meanwhile, Ukraine will find out if it has the European Commission's support for EU membership by the end of next week. During a visit to Kyiv, the Commission's President, Ursula von der Leyen, told President Zelensky more work still needs to be done to fight issues such as corruption. The executive's backing would be the first step to joining the EU. All 27 members will have to approve the move. Critics of the government's food strategy for England have described a leaked draft as a half-baked blueprint that's flatter than a pancake. They're concerned key recommendations from a major review are being ignored, including the introduction of a salt and sugar tax to help transform the nation's diet. Campaigners also accused ministers of goading farmers into producing more meat. The white paper is expected to be published on Monday. 3 people have been charged with the murder of a father whose body was found in woodland in Buckinghamshire. Mohammed Shah Subani was reported missing in May 2019 when he failed to return to his West London home. The 27-year-old's remains were discovered 7 months later. The mother of a boy with severe epilepsy is urging manufacturers to help struggling families access medical cannabis. Charlotte Caldwell says dozens of people have to pay privately to get a prescription at a time when the cost of living is soaring. She says those aged 18 or under can access treatment, but older treatment are being forgotten.
These mothers and fathers that are nursing them are absolutely exhausted, and they are having to budget really tightly simply because the cost of living crisis that we're in now has really took a grip on them. So I would like to appeal to Sajid, the Health Secretary, to extend RESCAS for these forgotten children over 18.
And lastly, interest rates for student loans will be capped for a year to protect against soaring inflation. Borrowers were facing a 12% rate at the end of this summer, but from September, that's being cut to 7.3%. The Department for Education says it's the largest scale reduction of student loan interest rates on record. You're up to date on GB News. More news as it happens now. Nana Akua.
Good afternoon. Right, so it's coming up to 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital TV. What am I talking about? Suddenly lost. I thought, where am I? Who are you? I'm Nana Akua. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. Now, as ever, this show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is media personality and political commentator Christine Hamilton and political commentator and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona. Now, still to come. Each Saturday in this hour we have a difficult conversation. And today I'll be looking at the hidden cost of lockdown. Army veteran and father of 5, Lee Webb, refused to leave the GP's car park until someone saw him. For months he couldn't get a face-to-face appointment, but thank God he did, because he was diagnosed eventually with an aggressive form of cancer. We'll be meeting Lee in just a moment. Also in our Great British Debate we'll be asking, is it the government's job to tell us what to eat? Now this comes after a government review recommended taxing salt and sugar that's used in processed foods, restaurants and catering. The government is expected to reject proposals to introduce a new salt and sugar tax in England when it announces its food strategy next week. But should it? I mean, is it the government's responsibility to make sure that we eat all healthily, or perhaps we should be doing it ourselves? And as ever, I'll be testing my panel about the week's news headlines in my quickfire quiz. You can get in touch, email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. So it's now time for difficult conversations. Now, Army veteran, personal trainer and father of 5, Lee Webb, refused to leave the GP's car park until someone saw him. And for months during the COVID lockdown, he couldn't get a face-to-face appointment with his GP. But thank goodness he finally did get that appointment. And unfortunately, he was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. So I'm pleased to say that joining me in the studio is Lee Webb. He's here to tell us his story. Lee, so, I mean, OK, so take me back, because you're Army veteran, you're a personal trainer.
Personal trainer. Before I had cancer, I was very fit.
Yeah.
I would be running about 4 times a week, certainly in the gym about 4 times a week as well, plus cycle rides. I was the type to cycle rides right up to Hunstanton from Bedford just to get a bag of chips and come back.
How many miles roughly? For those of
that would be sort of like about 150 miles. We're quite regularly doing 100 miles,
wow.
Me and my youngest son. So I was kind of fit. Never thought about getting ill at all or anything like that.
Yeah, and so then the COVID lockdown came. I don't know, did you take the vaccine? What was your view on that?
I didn't take the vaccine. I didn't think I needed it. Being a fit guy,
yeah.
And I think that was a thing throughout the fitness industry as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of fitness instructors had that kind of mindset. First 3 months I enjoyed it. I was getting out for a lot of cycle rides while the gyms were closed, and then we opened up a little bit where I could actually train people outdoors. So actually the COVID itself wasn't too bad. I actually had COVID this time last year.
Yeah.
And I actually had it pretty bad. And then about 4 weeks later...
Had you had the vaccine when you...
I hadn't had the vaccine.
So you still had it, yeah?
I believe at that time they were just rolling it out to 40 to 50 or 50 to 40-year-olds at the time.
Yeah.
So I hadn't had the vaccine. It just wasn't... I didn't believe I would get ill.
Yeah.
And it was one of them things. So when I did get COVID, I did fall ill. I had to have about 2 or 3 weeks off work. And then about a month later, I then caught tonsillitis, or what I thought was tonsillitis. I had an internal bleed inside the neck. I had to be taken to hospital for that.
Wow.
So that's the first time I've ever been in an ambulance, first time really that I've touched base with the NHS in many, many years. I got better from it. I was meant to have visited the ear, nose and throat department of their local hospital. I didn't get the letter for that appointment because it went to an old address.
Right.
Because I hadn't used the NHS in about 20 years. What then happened, around about October last year, I then had a second bout of what I thought was tonsillitis. And I noticed a lump in my neck. I become quite concerned about that lump in the neck because it was unusual. And then I went down to my local GP, who actually, funny enough, is around the corner from me. I was then refused entry. I was told that I had to phone up. So for the best part of about 3 months, I then tried to phone up on the phone. You could never get through. I did go down there a further time as well. And again, was just told to phone up. You just got to make it. They did say that there was something wrong with their phone system. And I actually said to them, well, you need to get your phone system sorted out because it's been going on for now a month and a half.
Yeah.
And then came up to January. So I then got a third bout of what I thought was tonsillitis, and this lump was actually increasing in size as well. It wasn't really showing up as a lump outside the neck, but you can actually feel it. You can actually wobble it about. I went down to the GP then, and they were quiet, nobody in the car park. I rung the bell, and they refused to let you in. They asked me if I had had a lateral flow test. Well, every time that I thought that I had tonsillitis, I had actually taken a lateral flow test to test me, see whether I got it, and in them occasions, they turned out negative. So what then happened was I explained that I'd taken a lateral flow test. Oh, you need the other test. So you'd actually have to go down to the testing centre, wait 2 or 3 days. PCR test. Yeah. And that takes about 2 or 3 days turnaround, or it was at the time anyhow. And I said, actually, I can't wait. My throat is actually in pain. I know this is not COVID because I've already had COVID. And they just wouldn't let me in. And they asked me to actually leave the car park. Yeah. And at that point, I said, no, I'm not going to leave the car park. I'm going to stop here until I get seen by a GP. At that point, she then said, well, if you don't leave, we'll have to call the police. I then said to them, well, call the police, because I'm not moving anywhere. And if you call the police, I will come back after I've been arrested or whatever the police need to do with me. I will come back, it will be with a tent, and I will camp out in your car park until the GP sees me. And I will notify all the papers. So I was determined to go down that route. Finally, they got the practice nurse to see me. And she actually checked me out in the car park, not inside the doctor's surgery at all, it was outside the car park. She then had a look in my mouth and noticed that I couldn't open my mouth. Now, I hadn't been aware of this, that my mouth had actually started closing up.
And when you say open your mouth, the front bit, but you mean the back of the throat where you're opening your...
No, it was actually my mouth.
Actual mouth.
Yeah. So most people can open sort of like about 30 millimetres, I believe, or can get 3 to 4 fingers that way in their mouth if they were to put it in their mouth. You could barely get one for me. And she tried to get this stick, tried to prise it open a little bit, and it wasn't working. And she said, you're seeing a doctor tomorrow morning. And the next day I did see a doctor. He examined my throat, and he said, what do you think it is? And I said, well, I've got concerns, you know, about cancer. He said, no, I think it's potentially cyst because it's smooth.
Yeah.
So anyway, it books me in for blood tests and an appointment to the ear, nose and throat department. Blood tests didn't show anything up, apart from a little bit of, I think my liver function wasn't quite up because I was dehydrated.
Right.
And I didn't realise you had to drink before the blood test, nobody told me.
Right.
But the blood test didn't show anything up. They'd done a cancer one as well, but not all cancers show up on a blood test. So anyhow, I went down to the ear, nose and throat department. This was 2 weeks after I'd seen my GP in January. And he felt my throat and immediately said, this is serious. And I said to him, my GP seems to think it's a cyst. And it felt like I was actually being told off at the time. He said, well, your GP is wrong. And I felt like I was being told off at the time. And at that time, it's just like, I went numb. I couldn't believe what I was being told, that I may well have cancer. You know, I'm a fit guy. And even up to that point, in between my bouts of what I thought was tonsillitis, I was going to the gym, working out 3 or 4 times a week in the gym, going out running. And when I go out running, it's for an hour, you know, minimum, hour and a half at the most. So I'm a long distance runner. So it really surprised me. And then that journey, because I had to go back to the gym and do a shift and do a client, and that journey from Bedford Hospital, it was just like numb. I didn't know kind of what place I was at. And it was just so surreal to be told that I might have cancer. What they do when you're first told, before they can officially diagnose you, you have to go for a load of tests, biopsies and scans. So over the next month, I then went for 3 scans, all different scans. An MRI scan, which is the final scan that I had. I had 3 biopsies. So my first appointment at the ear, nose and throat department, I had a biopsy then, which actually hurt and made my throat inflame. I then had one under radio radiography. So they had to look where they were actually putting it on, because the first biopsy wasn't conclusive, and they'd like to be 100% sure.
Of course, yeah.
And then the last one, which he actually took one out of my tongue because he noticed there was something going on in my tongue. As the time was going on, my mouth opening was actually getting worse, although they did give me exercises to try and prevent it from actually getting any worse. And it's a condition called trismus. So one of my lymph nodes were affected under my jawline. That's what was causing the mouth opening problems. So I was then diagnosed, and that would have been towards the end of February. And that was with cancer
That's this year?
That's this year, yeah. So that was cancer of the tongue, tonsils, and metastatic cancer, or secondary cancer, as it's most commonly known as, of the lymph nodes. They then gave me my prognosis, which is 75%. He said that some doctors will say it may well be about sort of 65%, but we're looking at 75% of you given your healthy lifestyle. And it wasn't lifestyle related that causes my cancer. It's actually caused by a virus called the HPV-16.
So it's a bit like the cervical cancer one as well.
It's exactly the same as cervical cancer. So in females, it presents itself as cervical cancer or head and neck cancer. In males, because we haven't got a cervix, no matter what people say, it presents itself in the head and neck area, or it tends to do that area. So he gave me my prognosis, and then he said this is curative.
Okay.
So there is that 25% chance that it isn't curative, but I work on the 75% chance that it is. And that's why, look, until they tell me otherwise, I'm treating it as curative.
So you've had some treatment. It's a stage 3 cancer at the moment.
It's stage 3, so I've gone through all my treatment, which I finished about 5 weeks ago. So I've had 2 sessions of chemotherapy, and I've had 30 sessions of radiotherapy. So
that must have been tough. I mean, I know you sent some pictures of the treatment that you went through as well.
The first 3 weeks was, to be quite honest, I felt was a walk in the park. Yeah, as you can see there, that's the scans that they took. And that's actually from the front of the head, I believe. That's the front of the head. The one previous behind it was under the jawline. So the big white lumps that you can see on the left-hand side, they're the cancer cells. So it surprised me.
Because you're such a fit person, you've been doing exercise all the time. I mean, the exercise itself has probably been something that has probably helped you through, really. And
I kept it going for as long as I could. Yeah.
But the thing is, though, it took them a long time to see you. And had it not been for your actions of just refusing to leave that surgery, you probably...
it may have been a little bit longer. Because when I had my second, or what I thought was my second bout of tonsillitis back in October, I spent about a week every day phoning the doctors up and trying to get through. And then, of course, it becomes less and less as the weeks go on, and you get better, and you think, oh, well, it's maybe just a lump, it's just probably a thing from the tonsillitis, and maybe I do need my tonsils taken out. And that's what you start thinking again, because everywhere else I felt okay, I felt pretty fit. I was suffering a little bit of fatigue, but I put that down to the COVID that I'd had a few months before. So I just thought, long COVID, that's what's making me feel fatigued.
But it wasn't that. So you've had the treatment, and you brought something. What is that? You brought some...
I bought the mask. So when you're in radiotherapy, this is what they do. They mould the mask around. It's all heated. It's actually a nice heat. So it's not boiling hot. It's nice heat when they put it around. It's actually quite relaxing. So when you go under the radiotherapy, okay, they've got a table. It slides under the actual machine itself. They need you to be in exactly the same place. And this is why it's so important that you try and maintain your weight, which I haven't done. So you'll probably, your viewers might not see that, but it's got loads of markings on. So you go into the same place, you're strapped underneath, and you're strapped to this table. So when you go under there, the radiographers, they have to leave. They do it from a camera next door because obviously...
And they trail the radiation over you.
You might be able to just see a mark here. So that gets taped up gradually so they don't keep hitting the same place. They hit the same place so it goes right through, all the way to the other side. For some people it affects them, other people it doesn't. what it does with me, it's made my hair fall out the other side, but it will grow back. It makes
it's just hair, don't worry about it.
It'll grow back.
At least
but I have it cut short anyhow, so it's not noticeable. One thing it has done is made me clean shaven.
Has it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
So,
you don't need to
from about here around here, I haven't shaven for several weeks.
So Lee, then, so you've got through this. Fingers crossed, the surgery and everything has worked. How soon will you know whether it's all clear? When do you get?
So my last radiotherapy session was approximately about 5 weeks ago. They have to wait 12 weeks from your last radiotherapy session before they do a scan. The reason for that is because it can show up false positives. Right. And there may well still be some cancer cells. They're continuously being destroyed over the next few weeks. So it's normally about 12 weeks. And it will be then 2 weeks, up to 2 weeks after that. They have generally been quicker, but it's up to 2 weeks after that then they give me the answer whether I've got any cancer cells left in there or not. They keep very close control of me for the next 2 years, so I keep having these scans on a regular basis. And then for the next 5 years, I have check-ups once a year.
Well, listen, Lee, we wish you all the best. Keep up your fitness, because obviously that's really paying off, and we wish you all the best. And just stay with us. We'll follow your progress, and we'd love to see you again. Let us know how you're getting on.
Thank you very much, Nana, for having me on.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
That is, of course, Lee Webb, and that was a difficult conversation. This is GB News on TV, online and digital radio. Coming up, the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is it the government's job to tell us what to eat? We'll be discussing that after the break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon. So it's coming up to 25 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now, a recent review has recommended that the government should introduce a new salt and sugar tax in England when it announces the food strategy next week. Now, the government have commissioned an independent review of the food system, which was led by Leon restaurant chain founder Henry Dimbleby. Now, he recommended that a tax to encourage manufacturers to reduce salt and sugar in food to improve people's health. But as the cost of living bites and food becomes more expensive, is this the right time to introduce another tax, which would then be passed on to us? So I'm wondering, really and truly, is it actually the preside of the government to be telling us what we should be eating? It's time for a Great British debate this hour. What do you think? I mean, I know what to eat. I'm not going to sit there eating mouthfuls of sugar and salt. I don't need them to talk about taxes. But what do you think? Joining me now to discuss this is Tam Fry. He's the chairman for the National Obesity Forum. Now, Tam, I'm presuming that you support the salt and sugar tax.
Yes.
Yeah. Why? Why?
Well, it was a very reasoned review that Henry de Maubry made. And given that we've had already one very successful levy, which is the sugary drinks industry levy, he thought that a variation of that would work for food as well. And I totally agree with him. What I also agree with, that in fact it's not going to make food more expensive, because the whole idea is that it should actually bring the costs down. So it's a win-win situation, and I think the government is very stupid to ignore it.
So there's those that would be, so with the salt and sugar tax, then what would it actually mean? Does it mean that food manufacturers need to reduce the amount of salt and sugar and then they will pay less in tax, or is that how it works?
They will be taxed. We don't know exactly, or the levy, we don't know exactly what the level will be. But basically the idea is that they bring the sugar down, because sugar and salt together are two terrible ingredients when it comes to obesity. And the computer modelling, which Henry Dimbleby has done, has actually shown that, in fact, the reduction in sugar will be roughly 10 grams per person per day, and for salt, about half a gram, which is actually very significant in terms of salt. But the really impressive figure is that combined, they will reduce the amount of fat which we eat every day by 118,000 tons.
But you see, that's all very well, but ultimately, though, because I actually get quite annoyed with these. So if you're buying a mixed drink or something to go with water, the fact that they put different additives like saccharin or aspartame or other things, I personally would rather have the sugar. I'd rather you put the sugar in, and then I can work out how much I should be taking of that. I don't know the outcome of aspartame, saccharin, all these other different things that they're putting in instead of that. And could we not be setting ourselves up for more issues down the line that we may not have anticipated that could be worse than sugar?
I believe not. I mean, sugar is the worst of all of them. The sacharins and the other sweeteners are also a problem, but not such a problem. But it's the sugar itself. And we are...
Why though? Why though? Because ultimately when you eat something, it breaks it down to sugar. So carbohydrate is another word for sugar. It breaks that thing down to glucose so your body can process it. So everything is ultimately sugar. So why, why shouldn't people just be left to work out to do it themselves? It's not going to make... It'll affect people.
You can work it out, but I would guarantee that 75% of the population can't work it out. And therefore, if you will, the advice is this is what should happen. You have to remember that sometimes, and particularly in snacks, the sugar levels are so high, way over the recommended amount per day, let alone per snack. And people consume them, and they consume them too much, 20%, 50% sometimes for children. And therefore, the government has a duty to protect the health of the nation, and therefore to bring the levels down to a reasonable level.
You think it'd be the duty of the parents, though, to determine what the children should eat and, work that out? I mean, I just get a bit nervous with the government being micromanaging and getting involved in these sort of things when ultimately I would just rather see people being educated more about food and the manufacturers being, instead of, being more transparent with what is in the food. So instead of the 60 different names that there are for sugar, or the way they try and disguise it with maltodextrose and this and that, and, we don't realise we're eating sugar, I would rather more transparency there so that people know what they're eating, because then we can actually make a proper choice.
If that were life, it would be wonderful. But unfortunately, manufacturing food, a lot of it's done for business. And the greater the amount of food they can sell, the bigger the profits. And therefore they know that fat, salt and sugar are addictive. And that therefore, if they put those ingredients in, people will devour them. Now, you, Nana, will do what you will do, and I thoroughly approve of that. But we're talking about people who have no education at all, and they are at the mercy of the exploitation of what they are eating by the advertising business and the food business.
But they've all got, most people, I mean, I know there's a lot of, you might have difficulty getting hold of a laptop or things like that, but there is so much out there the majority of people can get hold of the information that is required if they want to. So I don't think that I don't think those people would make any difference what the government do. They
well,
will
the
still
majority
eat
of
that
people can
bad
get hold
food.
of it, but will they understand it when they've got hold of it? Because the education on food has been woeful in this country for the last 25 years. Fortunately, primary schools now are starting to teach children about where food comes from, how it grows, how to cook it, and things like that. But there are millions of families in this country who depend on processed food. And processed food is a right champion of too much sugar and too much fat and too much salt. So if you will, they eat what's there. It's ready meals, which they can't cook themselves, so they get ready meals. They get Deliveroo bringing everything
Just
to their
eat
doorstep.
Deliveroo.
They don't have, or they feel they don't have to know anything about it. Somebody has got to take control. And Dimbleby, who was commissioned by Michael Gove in 2019, spent 2 years researching this, and he talked to a huge number of people all over the country. And he has determined that we've got to attack the junk food, get rid of junk food as quickly as possible, and this is one of the ways that it can be done.
And finally, what about them investing more in, maybe subsidising good food? So putting something in, making the good food cheaper so that people can get hold of that. I mean, wouldn't that be a good angle for
That would be absolutely
Well, why
brilliant.
don't they do that then?
Fruit and vegetables.
Well, why don't they do that? Why don't they work with subsidising, helping the farmers out and encouraging? I mean, I know they're planning to encourage more farmers to...
You write to Boris Johnson and tell him what a good idea that would be. But unfortunately, advertising good food doesn't sell. And people find a lot of difficulty finding fruit and vegetables as well. It would be terrific if the food industry lived up to its responsibility and actually participated in that. It could be done.
Well, this is what I'm saying. Instead of bringing in this salt and sugar tax, I think potentially the government could be attacking it in that angle. I mean, that seems to me...
Well, they should be doing both at the same time. But the problem is that in the last 25 years, we have no government strategy that has been fit for purpose. And that is a lot of research has gone into that, and they said, we haven't gotten anywhere, we've got to be fairly radical, and this is one of the radical ways of getting about it.
Well, listen, Tam, it's a very radical way. I wonder, hopefully, Boris can deliver on this promise of improving the overall health of the nation. Whether it's the government's job or not, I don't know, but Tam, it's
75% of the population is overweight. Something has got to happen.
They've got to stop eating so much. Tam Fryer, thank you very much for talking to me. It's lovely to see you. He's the chairman for the National Obesity Forum. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, on the way, we'll continue our Great British Debate. And I'm asking, is it the government's job to tell us what to eat? But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Podley Middlehurst.
Nana, thank you. The top stories on GB News. Clarence House has said Prince Charles remains politically neutral after he reportedly described the government's migrant policy as appalling. That comes after the High Court ruled the first deportation flight to Rwanda can go ahead on Tuesday. Campaign groups are expected to appeal. The Times newspaper is reporting that a source heard the Prince of Wales say he was more than disappointed by the policy during a private conversation. The family of Sean Pinner, who was given a death sentence for fighting Russian forces in Ukraine, says they are devastated. He and another British man, Aidan Aslin, were found guilty of mercenary activities by a court in the separatist region of Donetsk. In a statement, Mr. Pinner's family described it as an illegal show trial and said he should be treated like a prisoner of war with a full independent legal representative. Meanwhile, Ukraine will find out if it has the European Commission's support for EU membership by the end of next week. During a key visit to Kyiv, the Commission's President, Ursula von der Leyen, told President Zelensky more work still needs to be done to fight issues like corruption. The executive's backing would be the first step to joining the EU. All 27 members, though, will have to approve the move. And critics of the government's food strategy for England have described a leaked draft as a half-baked blueprint that's flatter than a pancake. They're concerned key recommendations from a major review are being ignored, including the introduction of a salt and sugar tax to help transform the nation's diet. Campaigners also accused ministers of goading farmers into producing more meat. The white paper is expected to be published on Monday. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News, and Nana Akua will be here in just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, and the left fights the right, and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was, in fact, a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon. It's just fast approaching 38 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now, it is time for our Great British Debate. And is it the government's job, what do you think, to tell us what to eat? Now, there's a recent government review that's recommended that it should introduce a new salt and sugar tax in England when it announces its food strategy next week. The government commissioned an independent review of the food system led by Leon restaurant chain founder Henry Dimbleby, and he recommended the tax to encourage manufacturers to reduce salt and sugar in food to improve people's health. And, of course, that wasn't one of the only things that came out of the report. But as the cost of living bites and food becomes more expensive, is this the right time to introduce taxes? And which obviously would be passed on, especially as we're all struggling and tax seems to be going up. Let's see what my panel make of that. Is this the right time to do that? And should the government actually be micromanaging what we eat? Right, let's speak to my panel. I'm joined now by Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona, and also Christine Hamilton, author. And what else do you do, Christine? You've got loads of things on your title there.
Yeah, I mean, author, it's kind of you to call me an author. I have written 2 books, but not for a long time, and I have no intention of writing another. But, I mean, technically I am an author, but it always sounds a bit strange to hear myself described as
No, but you are. So,
well,
we've got your media personality. That's sort of slightly vague, though. You do lots of other things.
I'm just a media butterfly, that's what I am.
So what do you think, then?
Well, I think the government should keep its nose out of people's business. This is the nanny state gone mad. What I think we should do, I mean, yes, people should eat less salt and sugar, and that's what we try and do, but people need educating in all that. What happened to domestic science at school? How do children get taught how to cook fresh food? No, they don't. They think that food comes in a box and it's delivered by a man dressed as a kangaroo. They don't understand how to do proper food. One of the campaigns that the government did do, which I thought was successful because it wasn't taxing or anything, was 5 a day. And that...
But there's no science to that at all. I mean, there was just...
No, but it does at least say to people that an apple is a good thing and have this and colourful foods. That, I think, was worth doing. But no, I think this is an absolute nonsense. And as you said, this isn't going to be a tax on companies who are buying the sugar and the salt in the first place. They're going to trickle it all down and it'll be a tax on people. And it's a regressive tax because it doubly regressive because it hits the people at the bottom of the income scale more because they spend a bigger proportion of their income on food. And now is not the time to do it when people are desperately struggling.
OK, Albie, what do you think?
I think this is it's a tricky tightrope which the government are walking along at the moment, because obviously, you know, we've got a Conservative government in power. We don't really agree with raising taxes, but we have obviously raised corporation tax, we've raised national insurance contributions, and so we're saying we don't want to rise this sugar and salt tax, even though it might be a good thing, but at the same time we're raising taxes in other areas. So that's a bit confusing. But there is a huge problem with obesity in this country, and there's a huge problem coming for the NHS. I think in a couple of decades' time, people are predicting that there could be 40% of British adults being obese. And a lot of that, yes, it does come to personal responsibility. People need to make better choices when it comes to their food. But also, in difficult times, when children are causing lots of problems and they want food, they see a packet of sweets at a till, the parents might just want to buy it for them so that they're quiet. So there's a lot of temptation, and that's
kids,
the problem.
You haven't got kids?
No, I don't.
I have. What you described is exactly what happens. Mine alive, he goes, ah! Then he goes, and he's lovely. You think, what a cute thing. And then he goes, I want that thing. And literally like a monster. And then you have to get that thing, otherwise, unfortunately, they'll be crying all the time.
Well, of course, supermarkets deliberately, they put things at the till to tempt us, never mind the children. Exactly. They put all the sweets are at child's eye level. Apparently, the reason why Prince Louis misbehaved and was so wonderfully entertaining over the Jubilee weekend was because they'd been fed quite a lot of sweets to sort of, you know, keep them going. But no, I just think people should be educated, they should be encouraged, etc., etc. But I really do not want the government meddling in what I eat. And by the way, you're absolutely right that obesity is horrendous and it's rising and the figures are going to be off the scale. But it is a fact that fat people die younger, so they actually don't end up costing the NHS that much more
that's
necessarily.
OK, then. Let's let them carry on, then.
It's not OK, but it is a fact when you're talking about the cost of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, but...
They're not going to need care homes.
But then during that time as well, that they may suffer more health issues, so then they'll be using the services more. Look, I really genuinely think that the government should be really just back out of this sort of thing. I actually think if they're serious about it, then they could deal with manufacturers, they could deal with promotion and making it easier for our farmers in this country. There are so many things. I mean, Boris is setting up this strategy. It's sort of a grow for Britain type of strategy, and he is aiming to help farmers and encouraging them to produce more fruit and vegetables and things like that. They're also going to have a vegan option on meals as well, which is fine. But vegan options aren't necessarily healthier. I mean, I know people talk about it. There's a lot of omega-6 in the product, so they use a lot of sunflower oils and things like that cause inflammation. So it's not even the best strategy.
But subsidise the healthy food rather than taxing the unhealthy.
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
You know,
why not that way around? And everyone says, oh, there's not enough information out there. Tam said that people aren't educated. But people are educated. If you want your latest iPhone, you go on your phone, you find the most up-to-date thing, and everyone's researching and researching. People could be doing and are doing that if they want about food.
I think that two things need to happen. I think the government should actually follow the example of the Portuguese government, who have actually recently reduced the sugar and salt content in a lot of food in Portugal by 11% by actually working with the food associations and the manufacturers to actually bring that content down. But then we also need, I think, proper home economics to be brought back in schools.
Absolutely.
So that children are taught what to be
science.
cooking, how to cook, where food is coming from, and what a healthy diet looks like, so that they grow up as adults that are going to be healthy and not become obese.
You're 100% right. If they were taught how to cook, instead of being taught all this woke nonsense, which is cluttering up...
God.
Well, it's cluttering up the curriculum, and they're not taught the basics of living well, which surely ought to be more important.
Precisely.
Well, let's see what our Great British Voice thinks, because this show's nothing without one of those. So this opportunity is, of course, to be part of the show. Tell us what you think about the topics we're discussing. Where should we go? Should we go to London, Ian? Let's go to London. Let's have a chat with Chris Davis. Let's find out what he thinks about it. Chris, welcome to the show. So what do you think?
Hello.
The government micromanaging what we eat, is that where they should be?
No, not at all. And I'm all in favour of nutrition being taught in schools rather than critical race theory. So I'm in agreement with your panel on that. This is not an issue for government. It's an issue for parents. It's also an issue for teachers, if they want to start teaching children again about importance of nutrition. But Nana, people laboured under the misapprehension that a low-fat diet was good for them. And there's now scientific evidence that suggests otherwise. There are plenty of places to get information on nutrition from. I know you're much more learned and qualified on this than I am. But the chap that was on earlier on, Tam from the National Obesity Forum, I'm not quite sure what planet he's on, but when it comes to real life, real world, people make choices. They may not be the choices that the government likes, but I don't go to McDonald's thinking, oh, I'll have a lovely, healthy, nutritious burger and chips. I know I'm eating junk food. And in terms of the affordability of food, if you go to the market when food is in season, and let's say you buy 10 cobs of sweet corn for £1, alternatively, you go to the supermarket and you buy 2 cobs for £2.50. If people are taught to cook seasonally, you can actually eat very cheaply. Now, I'm not going to go completely down the Lee Anderson route, but I don't altogether disagree with what Lee said either. I think his intentions were good and obviously blown up by the media on the left who just wanted to beat him over the head with it.
Chris, well, thank you for your eloquent thoughts as ever. That is Chris Davis. He's there in London with his thoughts on whether the government should be telling us what to eat if it's their job. But I've been asking, what do you think? Is it their job? Let's see what you've been saying. Kate says, no, our government shouldn't tell us what to eat. I don't tell Boris how many kids he can have. Very good. Jamin says, that's a round of applause for that one. Jamin says, governments and campaigners are always eager to punish people for eating the wrong things, instead of putting the tax they make into encouraging people to eat healthy foods. That's what we were saying, isn't it? Tom says, although Tam says they could probably do both. Tom says it's not up to the government to tell us what we can eat and can and can't eat. Surely it's down to the amount of food we stuff down our faces. Parents should take responsibility. Sugar and salt are not to blame. It's true, isn't it? It's the hands that pick up the food that put the food in the mouth. Colin says it's not the government's job to dictate to the public what we eat. I personally would just add salt and sugar to my food at the table. Mind your own business and stay out of my life. Well, there you go. Right, well, listen, I'm going to move on to this now. Hands up at home, please do this. Hands up if you share a bed with someone. These two, let's see if these two are going to... No, I'm pleased to say... hands up. I'm pleased to say that my hand is firmly down, thank God. It was once one of the most annoying things that I've ever had the misfortune to do. And when I got to a friend's house, when I go to friends' houses, I'm so nosy, I always like to look around and see the rooms and everything. And when I see a double bed there that many couples share, I think to myself, my God, are the two of you really sleeping together on that? Well, you can't use the cartoon running legs, you know the thing when you run, or the starfish? But apparently, research says that sharing a bed promotes longer, more restful sleep, and it's linked to lower depression, anxiety and stress, and a better satisfaction in life. Christine, I'm going to come to you. You're in a very healthy relationship. You've been in there for many, many years.
Don't remind me.
I presume you share a bed. I'm not...
Well, yeah, of course, but I mean, I don't agree with all of that. I mean, yes, a sort of nice little cuddle at night just before you drift off to sleep is good. On the other hand, when you can't get to sleep because they've already fallen to sleep and they're snoring, and then they move around and then they take all the duvets. So it's kind of horses for courses. I'm having a new knee on Tuesday, and I have no intention of sharing a bed with anybody for quite a long time afterwards. I want the whole thing to myself. I find that difficult to believe, that it just depends, frankly.
Albie, what do you think?
I think it's probably the same as most things. I think when the relationship's good, obviously it's going to be lovely to share a bed with someone and you might sleep much better next to them. But if you're loathing your partner on the brink of divorce, it might be the worst thing possible to have to share a bed with them. You can't wait until the divorce is settled and you've got your own house. So I think it's probably a bit more nuanced than this study is making out.
And you think, I mean, I couldn't think of anything worse than sharing a bed with someone. I love my own space, and that bed, do the starfish dance. I mean, I used to... When I shared a bed with someone, I found it most irritating. They'd wake me up at night, make noise, all sorts of things. I mean, it's just not good. I don't understand how people get a good night's sleep in a shared bed. It doesn't make any sense.
I think you get a better night's sleep on your own.
Exactly. So we say poo-poo to this research. Right, now it's time for our quick-fire quiz. It's the part of the show where I test my panel on some of the other stories hitting the headlines right now. If you just tuned in, I'm joined by media personality and writer Christine Hamilton, and also political commentator and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albie Amankona. Now, they've both got a buzzer.
Oh, dear.
Christine, can you buzz your buzzer? Let's hear it. And Albie, buzz your buzzer. Fabulous.
What is this for?
OK, please play along at home. Question 1. A new Harvard study has found... And just the rules of the engagement, you haven't played this before. Don't answer without buzzing. If you do, you'll be disqualified. You cannot answer. All right. A new Harvard survey has found that being an optimist can make you live longer. But by how many years? Is it A, 1 year, B, more than 4, or C, more than 10 years? Christine?
Well, I haven't got a clue, but let's go for 10 years.
Albie, what do you think?
I was going to go for 10 years as well.
Well, let's see if you're
You have
right.
10, I'll go for 4 or whatever.
No, the answer is B. It's too much. You should have done that.
I did it just in time.
Nil point. No, you don't get anything. I can only accept your first answer. That's the other rule. Right, question number 2. A piano Princess Margaret gave to her toy boy, Love Roddy Llewellyn, is up for sale. But how much is the instrument set to fetch at auction? The nearest guess wins.
Oh, we don't get a choice?
No, you just do your buzzer in first. Albie?
£500,000.
£500,000. Christine?
Well,
I don't want to disqualify.
It depends whether it's a clanky old upright or a Steinway or whatever, but 500,000, let's go for 300,000.
£300,000. Let's see if you're right. £7,000. Christine, you were... Who was the nearest? Was
Chris,
that
I was,
definitely.
but by a long way out.
Albert was way off. I don't know what he's doing for 500 grand.
It all depends how much the Princess Margaret connection is worth.
Right, all right, let's go to the next question. Question 3. Which animals have been trained to carry microphone backpacks into earthquake zones to rescue teams? So rescue teams can talk to survivors. Is it A, cats? Is it B, macaque monkeys? Or is it C, rats? Christine?
No idea, rats.
She says it's rats. Albie?
I was going to go with rats, but I'll go with cats.
The answer is rats, Christine. You're doing well, very good.
Well, you were right too.
Well, we've got two left. What do you think? Do you think that that's a nice idea, rats going to the rescue zone to...
Yes, if it works.
Yeah. At least it gives them something to do.
The rats get a bad press. They're not all wholly bad. They have their good points.
Really?
Well,
there's one.
There's just that one. Right, OK, question 4. A Californian woman found cash hidden in a free sofa that she got online. How many dollars did she find? Nearest guess wins. Albie?
$10,000.
$10,000. Christine?
$10,000.
You can't say the same thing.
I thought you said 20.
No, I said 10.
well, 20 then.
$20,000. Let's see what the answer is. The answer is $36,000, Christine.
Wow.
So well.
But surely the big question is, did she give it back?
Yeah, would you... If you found that money in a safe, would you give it back?
I think I would probably keep it.
What would you, Christine?
Oh, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, you know, when I'm on television, of course I give it back. But, you know, when I'm in the privacy of my own home and you find it, I wonder whose money it actually was. It could have been... It might not be the person you got the sofa from. It could be the person before.
Well, would you give it back?
Never.
Come on, ask the question.
I think we'd better say yes. Yes, of course we would.
There's no way on earth I'd give it back. I'd just keep my mouth shut and take it quietly and laugh. Right, your fifth and final question. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has blasted fast food chain KFC for using which ingredients in its burgers as the price of lettuce skyrockets? Is it A, cabbage? Is it B, cauliflower? I must also finish the question, Christine. I will let you off this time. I didn't include that in the rules. Or is it C, carrots? OK. Albie.
I think it must be cabbage.
You think it's cabbage?
What else would it be?
Well, I was going to say cabbage, but let's be different. I'll say cauliflower.
You think it's cauliflower? Well, let's have a look at the answer. The answer is...
Cabbage.
Cabbage! Well done. All right, well, listen, are we scoring? If we're on a draw, I'll give you a final. I'll give you a throwaway question, but please don't throw it away. OK, final question. An advert for which range of Tesco products has been banned for being misleading about their environmental benefit? Is it A, household cleaning, B, plant-based foods, or C, bamboo clothing? Christine?
The first one, the cleaning products.
The cleaning product. Albie, what were you... Press your buzzer.
Is it bamboo clothing?
Bamboo clothing. Let's see. The answer is... It's B, plant-based food. Nothing. That last point was a throwaway. They threw it away. Christine, you won 3-1. Everybody, give Christine a round of applause. First time you've done the quiz. Albie, you were useless. You know
I would say that's the worst I've ever done it.
It is pretty bad.
Oh, dear.
Honestly, really bad. But hopefully you did better than these two at home. Right, well, on today's show, we've been asking, should royals weigh in on the immigration policy? According to our Twitter poll, what percentage, Christine? Take a guess.
What percentage thinks they should not?
They should or shouldn't. It's up to you.
The percentage that think they should wade in, I would say, is 10%.
Albie?
Should weighed in, let's go with 7%.
It's 11.4%, so you wouldn't have got the 0.4. 11.4% said yes, they should weigh in, and 88.6% of you said no, they should not. Well, I'm going to say a huge thank you to my fabulous panel. Media personality and political commentator Christine Hamilton. Christine, thank you so much.
Where's author gone?
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. And also co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albie Cohn. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And as ever, thank you to you at home for your company. I will be back. Next up, it's Neil Oliver. I'll see you tomorrow at 4. Enjoy.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking to remain breezy with showers, mainly affecting northern and western parts of the UK. Let's take a look at the details. A breezy but mainly fine and dry evening to come across southwest England with plenty of late sunny spells. However, there remains a chance of catching the odd shower. Across southeast England, it will be generally dry with plenty of sunny spells, though there is also a chance of the odd isolated shower. Across South Wales, it's remaining rather windy across the high ground and generally breezy elsewhere, with a mixture of sunny spells and some isolated showers. It's mostly a dry picture across the Midlands with plenty of evening sunshine on offer. It'll remain rather windy and gusty, with an isolated shower also possible toward the north and west. It's a similar weather story in northeast England with strong winds, particularly over high ground. Though there will be some blustery showers, there will be plenty of late sunny spells in between. Remaining rather damp across southern Scotland with showers that could be heavy at times. However, there will be some sunny spells in between. Remaining windy though, this will ease later. For Northern Ireland, there'll be a mixture of sunny spells and frequent blustery showers, some of which could be heavy at times. The showers and wind easing overnight. The showers will continue across northern and western parts of the UK overnight, though